I hope everyone has had a safe and a happy 4th of July holiday. This year is flying. We have the next holiday to come, which is Labor Day weekend, and that means the end of summer. And with everything that has went on this year, it seems like just yesterday we were in the winter months and we were dealing with um, in March, we started dealing with the virus, and here it is mid July, and we just look back and we think, where is all the time went? And it's a reminder to us of just how much time does fly. And we have today. That's what we have. We're not promised the next minute or the next hour or the next day. We have today. And with today comes opportunities. Opportunities in things that we get to be a part of, things we get to partake of, um, even our view of things is an opportunity. We get the opportunity to view how something is, and sometimes our view can be changed. Um, I've thought a lot about that this week. I want to focus on one word today, and that is success. How do you define success? And I think that's definitely something that is looked at in the church. Is how do we define success? Um, there is a parable that Jesus tells in Matthew 25. He tells of the parable of the talents. And what that story is about a master who's leaving. He's going to go away. And before leaving, he entrusts his property to his servants. Now, according to the story as it's told, he gives according to the abilities of each man. One servant receives 5 talents, the second receives 2, and the third, he receives only 1. The property that's entrusted to the servants is worth 8 talents, and in today's terms, this would be 1 talent is a significant amount of money. Upon returning home, he asks them, "What have you done with what I've given you?" And I'm paraphrasing there, but that's what he asked them. He's been gone for a while, a long absence, and he asks the 3 servants for an account. He wants them to give an account. What have you done with what it is that I've given to you? And the first and second one, they explain that they put their talents to work and they have doubled the value of the property with which they were entrusted. And each servant, according to the story, was rewarded. And the third servant, he says, or he has hidden it, is what he did with it. He buried it in the ground, and he receives punishment for it. And I love this story in the sense that we're all unique and we're all different, but we're all given talents in one way or another. And sometimes we think, why would I do that? Because that's not worth anything. What reward is there going to be in that? And our view of that takes it, and we've already decided. We've already decided what it's going to be like. We've already decided There's not going to be any reward in it anyway, so why even put forth the effort? Or I don't want to face what comes my way from taking this step to do this. I mean, it's going to involve me, and I may not like what happens. And so we've already decided. So we choose not to. And there's three specific instances that I think of over years I've been in ministry so far. And the first one was, I'll never forget, it was in the 1990s, sometime in the 90s. The state minister of the Church of God out of Anderson, that's the church I'm ordained in, he calls me and he says, I was wondering if I could ask something of you. There's a small church up in northern Indiana, and I was wondering if you would be willing just to drive up there and just love them. Just be with them and love them in the way that you do. And he said they're going through a hard time. They've seen a lot of success in their times together and as a church, but they're really struggling right now. And I just wonder, would you be willing to drive up and just love them? And I said, sure. So I drive up and I walk into the church, and there's 4 people sitting there. Now, how many in that moment would say, only 4? There's only 4 people here? What could possibly happen good out of fellowship and coming to feed 4 people? I want to tell you right now that me and those 4 people, we had church. It was one of the most wonderful times, and I can't explain everything that happened and that I received. And it was when I walked in, there was pictures on the wall of the church, and it was pictures of at one time when the church was flourishing so much. There was pictures of just so many people outside that church building, and they'd all gathered for a picture. And what had happened was business had moved away from that town. And because business had moved away, the people went with it. And I stood there that morning and I preached a message to them on the love of God. And one of the things that I said was that the love of God does not take into account what is current. The love of God is always the same and is always available. And the love of God never says, I'll only come so far. I'll only give so much. I'll only spend so much time with you. The love of God is the greatest thing that we can know. And that's what I told them. And before I left, one of them said, would you please come back? The first thing that we have happen when someone walks in here who is just here to fill the pulpit and just preach a message to us is just here just to do that. They're only here to fill the pulpit and preach a message to us. But we have been given the opportunity to share love today. And I drove all the way home. It's about a 4-hour drive. And I drove all the way home. And I thought, I'll never view numbers in the church and success ever again as I once did, which meant you had to have a lot of people in order to be able to do a lot of things and see a big God. See a big God at work. And it was incredible what that did to me. I never got the opportunity to go back, but that moment with those people had such a tremendous impact on me that I did decide then and there that it didn't matter if I was preaching to 4 or 40 or 400 or 4,000. It wasn't about me, and it wasn't about my view. It was about what I had told them about, and that was the love of God. And that I'll put it simple. It's about us using our talents to do the work that God gives us to do, and nothing else. We're just the ones who have the opportunity to see the moment and to do the work that He's going to bless in order to cause something to grow or to flourish or to become what it has the potential to become. He just wants our hands and our hearts and our feet, and he doesn't need our advice. He doesn't ask for our advice. He asks for our obedience. And another time that I said there were 3, and another time that I'll never forget was my sons and I. We were down in the village of a local park, and they've got an old chapel down there. It's an old, just log chapel, log church. And we had been walking through the village, and we walked into that little chapel, and the pulpit's there. And when services were held there, they would light candles in the window, and it was really just an awesome thing to be a part of. And I stepped up behind the pulpit there. My sons are in there with me. And I stepped up behind the pulpit there, and I told them, I said, I've stood behind this pulpit and preached a lot of messages in this little chapel, boys. And before I could say anything else, there was a man coming through the door. And he came in, and how he was dressed doesn't matter. What he looked like doesn't matter. Color of his skin doesn't matter. Nothing matters except that God brought an individual through the door of that chapel, and he just sat down and he said, preach me a message right now. Now you need to be ready whenever moments come. If you tell God you can use me, you need to be ready. And I'm standing up there. I didn't have a Bible. I didn't have anything, which I'm not stressing that you have to have something like that. I'm just saying, I was just standing there, and he says, preach me a message right now. And I stepped up there, and this is what I said to him. No matter where you come from, the direction you came from before you walked through that door, there is a God here right now who will embrace you in the way that you so desire to be embraced. and will love you with a love like no other. And anything on that side of the door, no matter what it is, no matter how excessive, no matter how severe, no matter how devastating, no matter anything on that side of the door can be the past and will be the past, never to be recalled against you again. There's worldly consequences, there's things like that, but I'm talking about in your heart and in your soul. Never to be recalled against you again. And my sons are standing there and they realize the moment. And you can tell that they're very well aware who's causing this to happen. They're not about to say anything. They're not about to do anything except just be there and be a part of what is happening. And I proceeded to tell the individual that his love cannot be measured. There is no height that is so high that his love isn't there. There is no depth that is so low that his love isn't there. There is no width so wide that his love isn't there when it involves and comes down to our need of knowing his love. And his eyes begin to well up. Now in that moment I could have looked at him and I could have said, boy, you're really getting something out of this, aren't you? I'm glad that you've come in, and I'm glad that you're being blessed, and I'm glad that you feel good about what you're hearing and all of that. But folks, that's not what, that wasn't my place to say that. It wasn't, because it's not about me. I just kept speaking apparently something that was really needed in this man's life. And I finished it up with this. I said, all you have to do is open up. That's all there is to it. You just let the wall fall and you just open up and allow him to come in. And then I stepped out away from the pulpit and I walked around to where he was, and he stood up, and I shook his hand. And I said, I'm glad we got to share this today. And he said, I am too. And he turned around, and my sons, they shook his hand. I know I'll probably never see that individual this side of heaven again. But in that moment, something that had been given to me, entrusted to me as a talent, as in being a vessel, in that moment, we were with God together. And I want to encourage people today that when you think about success, and I'm going to get to the third one in just a little bit, but I want you to think about when you think about success and how you define success, I want you to think about these words: well done, thy good and faithful servant. words like that cover everything. It's not well done, good and faithful servant, you did this in that moment of, it's well done, good and faithful servant. Whatever was asked of you, whenever it was asked of you, however it was asked of you, because it was asked of you, you stood up and allowed a God of love to work through you to accomplish what it is that He wanted to accomplish. Not for you. I mean, there's confirmation. We love to be confirmed that God is using us. But at the end of the day, it's not about us. And I can't stress that enough. And, you know, the parable of the talents, it teaches us that success is a product of our work. It's, if we weren't willing, we wouldn't see it, because it just doesn't float in the air. We're the vessels. He uses people. So it teaches us first that success. This parable teaches us that success is the product, or a product of our work. And the second thing that we can learn from the parable is that God always gives us what we need. We're never unequipped. And if we look at God and we say, God, I can't do that, I don't have this, or I don't have that, He's going to answer us with, look within. I've already given it I've already entrusted it to you. You have it. It's just whether or not you're willing to use it. So God always gives us everything that we need in order to do what it is that we're to do. The third thing is it teaches us that, and I've already said this, is that we're not all created equal. Each one of us, just as unto each one of the servants there were certain amounts given, each one of us, we're given our portion, or we're given our lot, according to how we're uniquely created. And, you know, there's people listening to this video right now. You can walk in somewhere and you can reach people that I'll never be able to reach. Or you could step into a spot that's not meant for me to step into, but because it's you stepping into that spot, you could see an enormous amount of things come back in return because of your willingness and your obedience. And when we put things in a box, and when we say, well, it could only be this, or it could only be that, or it could only be this much, because there is no because. It's all by Him. And so we have to understand we're not all created equal. When I received the call to drive up to that little church, I could have said, well, surely there's someone you can find. Surely you can find someone else. But the call came to me. I don't know if He called other people before me. I don't know. But I know how glad I am that I answered that call. And to drive up and be able to have church with 4 people, when others would walk in and say, where's everybody at? How are we supposed to have church with 4 people? So think about success, and think about how you view it. And I hope this helps someone today. I really do. And if you're struggling and you think, I want to open up. I want to do this. I want to be that. I want to see this. You got to let go. The third one that I want to tell you about is I was in a volunteer ministry in the 90s. And in this volunteer ministry, this was a revival ministry. And we would go to certain churches in certain towns, and the people in the church, they would put us up as guests. We would be whoever in the church was willing to have us from the team to stay in their homes. And I was riding in the car with the individual whose home I was going to be staying with. And they assigned me in the home of a sweet little elderly woman who, when I got in the car and I realized that that's who I was going to be staying with, I was a little uncomfortable, because I've stayed with my grandmother before, but I've never stayed in the home of a sweet little elderly woman like that. But her willingness to have me in her home was there, and we're in the car and we're headed back to her house. And she's telling me all about her family and her grandchildren and things like this. And something happened inside of that car. I felt impressed in my heart, no matter what the conversation was, I felt impressed in my heart to just say to her, your fingers are slipping. You're trying to hold on, but your fingers are slipping. And at first, she just said, oh, okay. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I've either just done the most foolish thing that I could do, or I just need to trust. I'm going to choose to trust. And later that night, we're sitting there in the living room, and she starts telling me about things that she's been struggling with, that she hasn't said to anyone. And she didn't know why she was sitting there telling me, but she was sitting there telling me of these struggles that she had. And I knew just to be quiet and just to listen, and just to let her tell me whatever it was that she needed to clear herself of. And the night ended, and the next day we had the service, and I stayed at her home all weekend, but we never had the conversation about that again. It was a wonderful time together. A few weeks later, I received a package in the mail. And in that package was a candle. It was a heart-shaped candle. And there was a little note in there that said, every time you light this, it will be a reminder to you of what has happened to my heart. Light and life has been brought to my heart. And I sat there and I looked at that and I thought, all the people in the world, all the people that could have come into contact with this sweet woman. And I got to be the one to go in and just share time together. And I was impressed in me to speak something. I had no preparation of speaking or anything like that, but I spoke it. And now I'm holding this in my hand, that every time I light this, it is to be a reminder to me of what happened in her heart as a result of allowing her fingers to slip to the point that she finally let go. And what it was there was something that had happened between her and a family member that she once was very close with. And division had come in and caused them not to talk anymore, and to be very bitter and hard-hearted and have nothing to do with each other anymore. And she went to that individual, that family member, and they reconciled. Because light and life had entered into her heart as a result of some guy she'd never met before, who was just volunteering in a ministry that particular weekend, looked at her and said, "Your fingers are slipping. You need to let go." There was a great basketball coach. He was a committed Christian man. And he said that success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you did your best to become, or you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming. I think a lot of people need to hear this today. I think there's a lot of people that's struggling out there. And I think we need to refocus. We're so caught up in so many things right now. But I promise you this, I make you this promise. And I'm not the source of it. I'm not even the one that's going to make anything happen, but I can tell you this, if you look in the mirror, you'll see someone who God can use. If you want to be that someone that God can use. God bless you, and may you have a beautiful, sunny Sunday afternoon.